Now it is my pleasure to introduce Michael Lepech. Michael Lepech is a professor in both the Stanford School of Engineering and the Stanford Doerr School of Sustainability, where his research focuses on the intersection of engineering solutions and global sustainability challenges. Mike is the acting faculty director of the Stanford Technology Ventures Program, or STVP, which is the entrepreneurship center in the Stanford School of Engineering. Related to this role, he is actively involved with a number of startups and venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, while also serving as academic director for Stanford Professional Education Program, focusing on entrepreneurship, venture capital investment in this program, product management. Interestingly, he's also the host of a new podcast series, Move Fast and Fix the Planet, produced by STVP, which explores the intersection of startups, venture capital, and sustainability and climate. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much, Liz. I'm really excited today to be chatting with Anand Subramani, one of my co-instructors in Stanford Engineering, and one of the instructors my instructors for our product management for the real economy course here on campus. Anand brings years of deep expertise in product management roles, having served as director of product at Zynga, then moving to product lead at Dropbox, and then Gusto, VP of product management at Pilot.com, and now senior vice president of product at Path, a platform that makes it easy to find a licensed therapist in network with your insurance, who is accepting new clients and is an expert in caring for your unique needs. Anand, I'm really looking forward to demystifying a bit the role of product manager and answering some questions today about what being a product manager means to you. So thanks for joining us.
My pleasure to be here, Mike. I'm excited to do this. I'm thinking back many decades to the beginning of my career and how useful something like this would be. So excited to do the demystification together.
Cool. So let's jump right into it. So, the title of this is a little bit about demystification. What do you think is like the biggest misperception regarding the role or function of a product manager? And just myself, like I can think of a few, such as, like the confusing project management expertise with product management expertise, or thinking that a new product, that the creation and launch is all that you do, and then your job ends. And of course, those things aren't true. But what do you think are some of the biggest misperceptions or myths about being a product manager?
It's a great question. I think you nailed one of them, which is the difference between project management and product management. The other one that really comes to mind to me is this concept of being the CEO of the product. So let me talk briefly about both. On the product versus project management piece, I saw a lot of questions about this to get submitted in advance. The job of the product manager is not primarily project management. Yes, there is some part of the job that is about making the trains run on time, but it's significantly broader than that. The whole purpose of the role is to figure out what to build and how to build the right things for customers. Obviously, execution is important in getting that done, but it's not actually the core skill, although it is related. On the second one, this being the CEO of the product, I'm guessing a lot of people here might have seen a blog post or an article, maybe on LinkedIn, about how the product manager is often quoted the CEO of the product. To some extent, that's true, but I think it connotes something that is not true, which is that it is an inherently powerful role based on the position of your company. I think it's the sort of the antithesis of what I see as good product management, where your job is actually to be a collaborative engine for people on your team representing the customer inside the building. You are a facilitator, you are a coordinator, you are a persuader, but you're not showing up to work in a black turtleneck and telling people what to do. So I think the sort of the CEO of the product idea is a little bit damaging and can go the wrong way. And that's another very common misconception I see.
So building off of the previous question, maybe blurring the lines between project and product management, a participant asked, can you offer examples of the type of report output that product managers might produce to support the product? I am a PMP certified project management professional and I'm trying to unblur the lines between these roles.
Totally. So going back to the previous point about the misconceptions, I think the question has a little bit of a misunderstanding about the role of the product manager. The job is not primarily to write reports. It's to be the general manager of the product. It should choose what we build, to choose how it should work, to make sure it's the right thing for the customer and the right thing for the business. Sure, you will write some reports as a product manager. You might do things like send a weekly report to the executive team sharing about the updates on your product, or a report to the customer service team with the primary bugs. But I think focusing on the reports actually isn't the point. So talking about the reports that a product manager produces is not really the core of the role. your job is to be accountable for the success of the product, but it's very different from project management professional. And I'd say PMP is a fairly unrelated skill to product management in general.
Thanks. Okay, of course, one of the major differences between project management and product management is responsibility for the product throughout its life cycle, which can be a roller coaster ride in some cases. One of our participants has asked, what strategies can a product manager use to effectively manage a product throughout its life cycle, considering market shifts and changes in consumer behavior? Further, how should a product manager think about ensuring a product is well positioned in a crowded market, which was another question asked by our participants.
Totally. So the best strategy that I've found to do this in my career is actually to focus really strongly on the customer rather than on the competition. I'm not saying the competition is not important. You should pay attention to it. You should be aware of what your competitors are doing. But to some extent, your customers are moderating your competition for you. If I go to a customer and I show them my product and what they tell me is, oh, this is worse than your competitor's product, I have a problem. I have a problem because the customer perceives me to be behind my competition. But if I go to a customer and their Infinity, here's a good example. Dropbox, I think, is a very good example. One of the early places where I was a product manager. At the time, there were Infinity file sync and share tools that existed. So if you went and you sort of did an analysis of the space, you would conclude that there is no company to be built here. Dropbox is now an $8 or $10 billion company. Clearly, there is a company to be built here. You do it by focusing on the customer and the user rather than on the competition. So my advice, again, is not to be ignorant of the competition. You definitely need to be aware of it. But it's actually to focus more on the problems of your customer and to have a good strategy that flows from that. And I think that will do you a great service, whether or not you're in a crowded market, whether the market shifts or anything else. You see this customer obsession show up at companies like Amazon or early Google or things like that. It's a consistent theme in successful product companies.
I really appreciate how you're highlighting some of the differences between product manager roles and product management roles and focusing in on the things that you need to pay attention to. Like, look, yes, the competition is important, but it's not everything. And so, but we have a number of questions that are a little bit broader. And so I'd like to broaden our conversation a little bit and now ask about some different types of products. And this is an area which I think you'll actually be very familiar given your current role at Path and your past product management roles. One of our participants has asked, what are successful strategies to use as a PM when my product is actually a service? And this is something, like I said, you have a lot of experience with.
Totally. I worked at a couple of places where the product was a service. Two big classes of strategies come to mind for me. The first one is to know who your customer is for the product team. What I mean by that is oftentimes when the product is a service, the customer of the tools or the software that you are building is that may not actually be the end user. It might be someone inside the building. So an example of this is Pilot.com is a back office finance service that does bookkeeping, accounting, tax preparation, things like that. I was the VP of product there from the company's founding. And one of the things that we spent a lot of time doing was building tools for our internal operations team to get things done in a more efficient way. So to some extent, a big part of our customer was actually inside the building. If we make their job better, they can focus on making the end customer's life better. So I think a big one here is know who the customer is of the product team and make sure you're building the right thing for them. I'd say a second one here is know what value you want the product itself to provide. It is possible to build a very successful company that gets value from lots of different things. You can get value from sales, you can get value from operations, you can get value from manufacturing, you can get value from design. And product is one, but not the only possible option in that constellation of choices. So knowing where you want the product to deliver value versus the service versus the sales team versus the marketing team versus something else is really important here so that you know what type of value you're trying to create, even if your product itself is actually a service.
Yeah, that's an interesting scenario because in some regards you're building tools for your internal back of the house team, whereas that also ends up being an interesting new product and is a bit of customer validation because there's no reason to think that the people working at Pilot.com are that different from people working at any other corporation that needs back house support.
I think that's totally right. So said another way, I think the skills for this are the same. The skills of product management apply whether your customer is inside the building or your customer is outside the building. might require more or less domain expertise. For example, at Pilot, we had to learn a lot about bookkeeping and tax preparation and general ledgers and other things. That's no different from if you were working on, let's say, a product that was in the travel space or something like that. So I do think generic product management skills apply, whether your customer is inside or outside the building, but you just need to know how you're using them.
Totally. I want to broaden the conversation even more by going a little bit global. So one of our participants is a product manager in a sub-Saharan African market, where, as they put it, issues to do with culture, the economy, and politics are always confronting them. And they go on to ask, how do you see the role of product management evolving in the context of Africa, or maybe if we broaden that out to developing economies more generally? And what would you recommend product management practices can be that best cushion such teams from the unique challenges that they have, if you can comment on it?
It's a good question. I would say the product management might be able to help with some of the problems, but there are definitely problems that being a good product manager can't fix. In my opinion, the way that I found this to be most useful is I actually apply a lot of the product management skill set that I learned and we teach in these courses as a general framework for problem solving. So it teaches you how to do problem solving in the right way, in the right order, and to make sure you get the right answer every time. We've had people in my Stanford class, for example, use this at nonprofits or in developing economies or in all sorts of other areas, and found the skills quite useful because, again, the skills are more about a generic framework for solving problems. For sure, there are problems that good product management skills can't fix, but even if you are running into sort of quote non-product problems, I found the strategy of thinking in a particular way is just a generally good way of solving problems that come up.
Yeah, no, I think that just sticking to the fundamentals and the frameworks for problem solving as a product manager are more universal than I think we often give them credit for being. So continuing the theme of broadening the conversation, the course that you teach here at Stanford is called Product Management for the Real Economy, which brings together students from across campus, and they're interested in all types of products and all types of ventures. And one of our participants asks if we can chat a little bit about product management for nonprofits. This individual specifically works at an institute that's developing some new web resources and programs that they think their organization could benefit from some product management structures and processes. What do you think? Product management for nonprofits?
I think it makes total sense. Sort of going back to the prior question, a little bit about the students that we take in product management for the real economy. We've had students from the medical school, from the law school, from the business school, from the School of Education. We've had people work at nonprofits, in for-profits, in hardware, in software, in manufacturing companies, and every possible thing that you can think of. So again, I think the skill here is thinking in a particular way and having a good approach to problem solving in general. I think it can be extremely useful in a nonprofit setting. It's not a for-profit skill inherently. And the lived feedback from some students who left the class and joined nonprofits is that this helped me not only accelerate my career, but actually be more effective at the nonprofit in general. So that's a long way of saying I think this student is very much onto something, and product management does have something to offer in almost any setting, whether you're for-profit or nonprofit.
Totally. Well, and so what that also brings to mind. You mentioned that in the class and in our more general product management certificate, we're coming from a variety of that. And there's a lot of questions coming in through the webinar in the live Q&A asking about what technical knowledge or what skill set do you need to become a PM? Is there a specific set of skills that you think would be most important? Of course, one of the easy things for me to say is, well, if you're interested in developing the skills, you can always take our product management course that we offer through online. But let's go a little deeper than that. What do you think makes a great product manager in terms of background and skill set or technical knowledge or any of those things?
Totally. So let me put, I think, a few things I perceive as misconceptions to bed very quickly. The first is I don't think it is critical that you have a strong technical background to be an effective product manager. You might need to learn some stuff along the way, but for anybody here who doesn't have a computer science degree, for example, you can be a great product manager. I'm 100% confident that's true. So in terms of the skills that are necessary, product management is a little bit strange because it's extremely heterogeneous. The role varies quite a bit based on the company and the context. So in some places it's customer heavy, in some places it's research heavy. Some places it is project management heavy, and some places it's design heavy. But I think the theme that is consistently true across all of them is great product managers, especially sort of early and mid-career ones, tend to do three things very well. The first is they tend to be pretty good at getting stuff done. No matter how good your strategy is or how good your vision is, if nothing goes out the door, whether, again, for-profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter, you're not going to have an impact on the world. So getting stuff done is very much a core skill. And there's a whole set of modules that we teach in the product management, the real economy class that help people with this skill. I think the second one is you need to be really good at figuring out what the right solution is to a particular problem and managing that through the life cycle. So you can sort of think of this as taking a single idea from start to finish. So if a customer comes to you with a problem or you identify a problem for the business, you need to be able to actually have a structure and a framework for solving that. And finally, the last one, you need to be good at the portfolio theory of projects. Almost nobody's ever working on one project at a time. Even at a small company, you might have 4 or 5 things that you're working on. So this skill kind of collapses to roadmaps and how you think about the portfolio theory of projects. Those are the 3 things I'd highlight for early and mid-career PMs to excel at. As you get into director roles or VP roles, the skills change a little bit. But for anyone in the first 10-ish years of your career, I think those are the skills to nail.
Yeah, I know. I like how you broke that down into saying, look, it doesn't. I mean, it's not as much a function of your degree or your past. It's your ability to get things done and to be able to prioritize effectively. So turning the conversation back to some stuff that was submitted prior to the webinar, we have a couple of questions related to specific challenges that might be faced by a product manager in their current role. How do you judge which platforms to integrate with your product and which might ultimately be in conflict with your own down the road? Happen to see a little bit into the future on this.
Yeah. My advice on this, again, is going to sound a little bit repetitive, but it's do good things for your customer. I basically believe that solving problems for customers is the leading indicator of value. I think the way that I think about this problem is channel conflict for sure can come up. Let's pick an example. Amazon is a marketplace that sells everything. They started an Amazon Basics brand, and they're starting to compete with some of their individual providers on a channel basis. That's probably not great if you're one of those people. But I think the idea here is you can get lost in the chess. You can get lost in the, I want to play 6 moves ahead or 7 moves ahead. And it's very easy there to ignore the needs of your customers. So my advice here, if you're thinking about an integration or something else, is assuming it's not an obviously bad idea for the business or tying you to a direct competitor or something. In general, I prefer to do things that solve problems for the customer. My belief is that I will figure out later how to capture either value from that thing, or if I need to change course in 6 months, I'll figure out how to do so.
I like that. I like that focus on saying, look, what problems are you solving for the customer? And I think that's always needs to be top of mind for any product manager. So the next question, when it comes to product vision, what's the responsibility of the product manager versus executive team? And thinking about this, I guess this question really has 2 parts, right? First, what is the relationship between product manager and executives? And I would tend to think that changes quite a bit, whether you're at a startup or a much larger firm, where the executives might be, next door in a small startup, or they might be a world away in a big company. And then, second, with regard to product division, how do you share the responsibility on either side of that table?
Sure. So the way that I see this working, and again, it's a little bit different at every company, is that the product org, which includes product, sometimes includes design, is responsible for the product vision. The executive team is not responsible for the product vision. The same way that I'm not responsible for the sales vision or the marketing vision, I am responsible for the product vision as the person who runs the product org. So I don't think you want to diffuse responsibility here, or quote, the general executive team is responsible for the product vision. That's what the product org is for. In terms of how you break it down inside the product org, it's usually broken down by ownership area, which sort of collapses to your org structure. So I'll give you a concrete example from Path. Path, we're a marketplace that we help patients find a therapist that takes their insurance and can see them quickly. We have 2 customers that we think about a lot. We have patients, and then we have therapists. So we're organized in such a way on the product team where we have a set of teams that are focused on patients and a set of teams that are focused on therapists. They are responsible for the product vision for each of those people. So those teams produce product visions for the therapist side, another set of teams produces the vision for the patient side, and my job is to stitch the whole thing together. So I'm both responsible for the overall vision and for making sure that the whole thing is coherent. No individual team is sort of going off the rails and doing something that doesn't make sense. But when you think about decomposing this inside of a product organization, I would look at your org structure. And the org structure and the team charters should be a pretty good representation of the scope of your vision.
Cool. As we come to the end of our webinar here, and it's gone incredibly fast, so I want to talk about an easy question, AI. I don't think it's surprising that folks are interested to see, with regard to the future of the product manager role. How do you see a technology like artificial intelligence changing the role? And specifically, one of our participants asked, how do PMs today think about utilizing AI in their daily routine? Do they think about it? Yep. And if possible, can you give us an example of how you might do that?
Sure. Let me maybe split this question into two parts. One of them is AI in the product, and the second is AI in the daily life of the product manager. AI in the product is a hard question for me to answer. Everyone that I know is taking some look about whether there's an opportunity to put AIs or LLMs in the product. Hard to answer that question generic. But in terms of the AI in the day-to-day life of product manager, I'll give you my sort of personal hot take on this. The current state of AI, in my opinion, is pretty good at three distinct things. The first is it's pretty good at creating content where the accuracy of that content is not super important. The second thing it's pretty good at is synthesizing information that you've given it. So can I give it a 100-page doc and have it turn it into a 1-page doc or a 5-page doc? And the last thing it's very good at is taking unstructured data and turning it into structured data. So if I need to do extraction from a PDF, for example, and put that into a nicely formatted SQL table or an Excel or whatever, it's pretty good at that as well. So when you walk through those three things, I tend to use AI tools whenever I'm trying to do one of those three things. If I'm writing a blog post, for example, I might use AI to write the first draft for me, and then I'll go through and sort of clean it up and make sure it comes through in my voice. Or if I get a 100-page document from a consulting firm about the state of the industry, I might ask it to synthesize this for me into 2 pages so I don't need to read the 100-page doc. So I think of it as being pretty good at specific tasks, creating content without a high degree of accuracy, synthesizing information, and turning unstructured data into structured data, and I use it in those three contexts.
No, that's really helpful, and I like the framework that you placed around it. All right, so we're coming up to the end of the webinar here, and as Liz had mentioned during the introduction at the start of the webinar, I'm the host of a new podcast called Move Fast and Fix the Planet, where we explore the intersection of startups, venture capital, and sustainability and climate change. Right? And it's going to debut later this year. And so during each episode, we end with 4 rapid-fire questions that all of our guests answer. And so I'm going to change the questions a little bit to fit this audience, but I'd like to try it with you. Are you ready?
Sure, let's go.
All right. What's on your bookshelf, playlist, or feed right now?
So I'm about to get on an extraordinarily long plane flight in a couple of days. So I'm trying to queue up as many things as possible. The 3 things that are currently on my list. One of them is the autobiography of Patrick Stewart. The second one is a book called Skunk Works, which is about the history of Lockheed Martin's aviation enterprise. Yeah. And on the podcast side of things, I got a couple of recommendations for this podcast called Acquired that I think has a very interesting segment on Costco that I'm looking forward to using to kill 75 minutes of a plane flight.
Awesome. What's keeping you late at work? What's something you think needs a great deal of attention in your role and is critical to success right now?
Sure. So for me right now, it's actually how we think about expanding our team. The product organization. I was the first technical person at Path when I joined a couple of years ago, and that org is now 65 or 70 people. So I'm thinking a lot about next year, with the end of the year, which means everybody's in the annual planning mode. So the goal for me is to make sure that we have the right team and the right org structure for 2024 so that we can go into next year being set up for success.
Cool. What's giving you excitement at work? What are you really excited about in your job right now, other than your upcoming travel?
Sure. The big one for me is, so this is a little bit specific to Path, but we've spent the last 9-ish months working on building a brand new place for therapists to practice. Today we use a third-party tool to do that. We're sort of on the cusp of releasing our own, where therapists will spend all day, every day managing their practice inside of Path software. this is a thing that we've been talking about since I started, and we can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're about 3 or maybe 4 months out from finishing this work. So I'm very excited that the work that I thought about 2.5 years ago is sort of finally going to have a nice bow on it, and then we can move on to bigger and different things.
That's cool. That's cool. And then finally, what's your favorite product manager hack? Something you could add to your day-to-day life and make this work.
I will say the one that I find myself using by far the most often is the separation of problems and solutions, something we teach both in the online classes as well as in the in-person classes around the real economy. This idea of sort of separating problems and solutions, I think, is such a powerful tool that I use it 10 times a day, including in my personal life.
Very cool. Well, Anand, thanks so much for your time today. And I'm going to shift it back over to Liz to wrap things up and give everybody next steps if they want to learn more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anand and Mike. Thanks, everyone. I hope you found this conversation engaging. If you're interested in learning more about product management and Stanford Online's offerings, you can visit our website, online.stanford.edu, to find more information about our offerings in product management and other topics. So thank you, everyone, for attending.